On today's video we will be looking at the Platform 2019 and the Platform 2024 movie, a gripping descent into the dark depths of human nature and society. So let's get into business. Golda Gaztelu Urruti's The Platform is a haunting blend of psychological thriller, dystopian horror, and social allegory. More than just a chilling survival movie, it serves as a powerful commentary on class disparity, human selfishness, and the fragility of morality in the face of desperation. As the film progresses, it slowly dismantles not only its characters but also the viewer's perception of hope, solidarity, and what it means to maintain one's humanity when the odds are stacked against survival. The film is set in a unique and disturbing structure referred to as the Hole, a vertical prison where residents live on different levels. At the top, the platform descends each day, laden with a banquet of food. The catch is that those at the top can gorge themselves while those at the lower levels get progressively less, and often nothing. The further the platform descends, the less food is available, leaving the bottom floors in a state of complete deprivation. This cruel system is not just a survival mechanism but a harsh metaphor for social inequality, where the privileged hoard resources, indifferent to the suffering below them. A unique dystopian premise. At the heart of the story is Goreng Ivan Masig, a man who enters the Hole voluntarily, hoping to receive a diploma after 6 months of imprisonment. This setup immediately raises questions. Why would anyone willingly submit to such a terrifying system? Goreng's entry into the Hole with nothing but a book, Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote, in hand sets the tone for the film's exploration of idealism clashing with the brutal reality of this oppressive world. From the very beginning, the film introduces a harrowing power dynamic. Those who live on the higher levels are temporarily privileged, while those below must suffer or scavenge for whatever scraps remain. The randomness of the floor assignments, which change every month, means that no one is secure. In 1 month, a prisoner could be on level 6 with ample food, and the next month they could wake up on level 180, where starvation drives them to madness. The psychological impact of this randomness becomes one of the film's most disturbing emotional elements. The emotional journey of Goreng. Goreng's journey through the Hole serves as an emotional anchor for the audience. He starts as an idealist, a man with hope, who believes in the potential for change. His initial companion, Trimagasi Zorian Egailor, is a cynical and unsettling character who teaches Goreng the harsh reality of life in the prison. Trimagasi's nihilistic view is simple: survive at all costs, no matter who gets hurt. His mantra of obvious becomes a chilling refrain, as he justifies cruelty as an inevitable response to the system. Their relationship is one of the movie's most complex emotional dynamics. Trimagasi's ruthless pragmatism clashes with Goreng's idealism, and as they remain trapped together, Goreng's moral compass begins to waver. The moments where Goreng is forced to accept his dependence on Trimagasi for survival, leading to one of the film's most violent and disturbing scenes, mark the beginning of Goreng's emotional and psychological decline. The intimacy of their shared suffering becomes terrifying, especially as Trimagasi's influence slowly corrupts Goreng's sense of right and wrong. Class and social allegory. One of the most striking aspects of the platform is its allegorical depth. The prison is a clear metaphor for the social stratification seen in the real world, where the wealthy and privileged hoard resources, while the poor and marginalized must struggle for whatever is left. The system in the Hole is random, but the parallels to capitalism and class inequality are unmistakable. The film forces viewers to confront uncomfortable truths about greed and apathy. Those at the top of the system have the power to share, to ensure that everyone in the prison could eat, but they choose not to. Instead, they consume more than they need, even though they know that people below them are starving. This portrayal of selfishness is particularly chilling because it reflects real-world behaviors, the way resources are unevenly distributed and how the wealthy often turn a blind eye to the suffering of the poor. Amogiri Antonia San Juan, a former employee of the prison system who enters the facility as a prisoner, represents the idealistic belief in spontaneous solidarity. She argues that if everyone ate only what they needed, the food could be evenly distributed. Her moral idealism stands in stark contrast to the brutal reality of the Hole, and her attempts to persuade those above and below her to ration the food are met with violence and indifference. Amogiri's tragic arc illustrates the emotional weight of maintaining hope in the face of overwhelming despair, desperation and moral collapse. As Goreng descends through the levels of the prison, the film forces the audience to witness the full collapse of human morality. On the lower levels, where starvation is the norm, people resort to cannibalism and violence to survive. These scenes are some of the most gruesome in the film, but they are essential in illustrating the extreme lengths people will go to when stripped of basic necessities. The film doesn't flinch from showing the consequences of starvation and desperation, and it's in these moments that the platform becomes not just a horror movie, but a psychological thriller that challenges the audience's understanding of morality. Can we truly judge the actions of those who resort to savagery when placed in such a system? The film raises difficult ethical questions about survival and sacrifice, constantly forcing the viewer to reassess their own boundaries of right and wrong. The role of power and helplessness. The film also taps into a powerful exploration of helplessness and the illusion of power. Each month, prisoners are randomly reassigned to new levels, emphasizing the complete lack of control they have over their circumstances. Even those at the top of the system are trapped within it. They may have food for now, but they know that in a matter of days, they could be thrust into starvation. This sense of powerlessness creates an atmosphere of constant fear and tension, making every moment fraught with the possibility of violence. This lack of control over one's fate mirrors real-life systemic inequality, where people are often born into wealth or poverty without any say in the matter. The film suggests that the randomness of the whole is not unlike the arbitrary nature of social class and privilege in the real world. It's this existential helplessness, combined with the film's brutal imagery, that makes the platform so emotionally draining. Hope, sacrifice, and the ambiguous ending. While much of the film focuses on despair, there is a glimmer of hope in Goreng's final decision to take action. After descending to the very bottom of the hole, he finds a young girl, a surprising twist, as it was previously believed that no one under 16 was allowed in the prison. The girl represents purity and innocence, untainted by the brutal system that has consumed everyone else. Goreng decides to send her back up on the platform, believing that her presence will serve as the message to those at the top that change is needed. However, the film's ending is left deliberately ambiguous. We never see whether the girl reaches the top or if the system is changed. This lack of closure is part of what makes the platform so emotionally powerful. It refuses to offer easy answers or neat resolutions. The film leaves viewers to wrestle with the possibility that even in the face of great sacrifice, the system may remain unchanged, and those in power may continue to ignore the suffering below them. Conclusion: a harrowing emotional journey. The Platform is a visceral and deeply emotional film that goes beyond its surface-level horror to explore profound themes of human nature, morality, and systemic inequality. The psychological toll of survival in such a cruel system is felt by both the characters and the audience, making the film a relentless and thought-provoking experience. From the cruelty of its power dynamics to the fragile hope of its ending, The Platform forces viewers to confront the darkest aspects of human society, and themselves. The emotional journey of Goreng, from idealism to moral compromise, serves as a powerful reflection of how even the most well-intentioned individuals can be corrupted by a broken system. The Platform lingers long after the credits roll, leaving behind a disturbing question: in a world that often mirrors the cruelty of the whole, what would we do to survive? And is there any hope for change, or are we, too, doomed to repeat the same cycle of selfishness and despair? While for the Platform Part 2, The Platform 2 delves into the unsettling universe established in the first film but attempts to expand its thematic focus by exploring new characters and ideologies, particularly religious and socio-political systems. The narrative shifts to a new protagonist, Perempuan, who is caught in a brutal, confusing system while trying to uncover deeper truths about the prison's operations. However, while the film carries the same visceral tension and violence as the first, it lacks the emotional sharpness that made the original so compelling. Let's take a deeper look at the various emotional and thematic layers the sequel attempts to unearth, even if it doesn't always succeed. The emotional landscape, despair, helplessness, and religious undertones. The first film's emotional core focused on survival, moral degradation, and how systemic inequality can warp human nature. The Platform 2 attempts to tap into a broader emotional spectrum but falters due to a lack of cohesion. Perempuan, the central figure of this sequel, embodies a quiet resilience, but her motivations remain obscured for much of the film, creating a disconnect between the audience and the character. The oppressive atmosphere that defined the original persists, as characters still grapple with starvation, violence, and the ever-present power dynamics within the prison. However, this sequel introduces a religious dimension that adds a layer of mysticism but also confuses the emotional through line. The presence of messianic figures and references to hellish torment evoke religious allegories, but the film fails to fully commit to these ideas in a way that resonates deeply. Unlike Goreng from the first film, Perempuan's journey feels more reactive than proactive. The lack of clear internal conflict or growth weakens the film's emotional impact. Whereas Goreng was driven by a need for redemption, Perempuan's motivations feel too ambiguous, making it harder for viewers to connect emotionally with her struggle. The societal critique, systems of control and moral relativism. One of the central themes of the Platform universe is the critique of social and economic inequality. In the first film, the Platform was a clear metaphor for class disparity in how systems of power and privilege lead to the dehumanization of those at the bottom. The Platform 2 continues this critique but adds another layer by focusing on those who enforce the system. The introduction of loyalists and their leader raises questions about authority and how those in power maintain control through violence and fear. These enforcers of the system introduce the idea of authoritarianism within an already oppressive structure. However, their motivations are murky, which detracts from the film's ability to offer a clear commentary on power dynamics. The exploration of control and punishment mirrors real-world critiques of governmental or institutional power, but the message is diluted by the film's overly broad symbolism. The inclusion of religious elements, such as the Messiah-like figure of Dajan Baby, seems to comment on how systems of control often co-opt spiritual or moral authority to justify their actions. However, this feels underdeveloped, and the film struggles to deliver a coherent statement on how these systems function. In this sequel, the prison is presented not just as a place of physical containment but also one of moral containment. Every character is trapped in their own form of hell, whether it be through their acceptance of the system's rules or their attempts to rebel against it. The film touches on the idea that even attempts at fairness can lead to oppression, as seen through Perempuan's journey. However, this message gets lost in the confusion of the plot and the lack of narrative focus. Descent into violence, losing the psychological edge. Where the first film thrived on psychological tension and moral dilemmas, the Platform 2 leans more heavily on violence and shock value. While the grotesque imagery is still effective in evoking a visceral response, it lacks the emotional weight that accompanied the brutality in the first film. The violence here feels less like a tool for exploring human nature and more like a means of spectacle. The repetitive nature of these scenes diminishes their impact and feels like an over-reliance on the shock factor. The emotional decay that was so prominent in Goreng's arc is less apparent here, as Perempuan's struggles feel more external than internal. The film does not give enough time to explore the psychological ramifications of life in the prison, and as a result, it feels more shallow in its emotional resonance. The characters seem to be moving through a series of violent set pieces rather than experiencing a profound internal transformation. Hope and despair. Is there a way out? Much like the first film, the Platform 2 ends with a sense of ambiguity. The film introduces new possibilities for escape or rebellion, but it leaves the audience questioning whether change is truly possible within such a broken system. The introduction of new players and the idea of a messianic figure suggest that the film is trying to explore themes of redemption and hope, but these ideas feel half-formed. The ending, much like the rest of the film, leaves viewers with more questions than answers. The lack of closure could be a reflection of the endless cycle of oppression within the system, but it also feels unsatisfying. The emotional impact is dampened by the film's inability to build a coherent narrative arc for its characters. Conclusion: a weaker, yet ambitious sequel. The Platform 2 attempts to build on the original's success by expanding the world and introducing new themes, but it ultimately falls short. The emotional and psychological depth that made the first film so powerful is diluted by a convoluted plot and underdeveloped characters. While it continues to deliver brutal imagery and raise important questions about power, control, and survival, it lacks the sharpness and focus needed to make a lasting impact. The emotional resonance is weakened by unclear motivations and an over-reliance on violence without enough psychological substance. While fans of the first film may appreciate the continuation of the story, the Platform 2 fails to capture the same magic, leaving viewers with a sense of lost potential rather than a powerful emotional experience. Comparing the Platform 2019 and the Platform 2 2024, it becomes clear that while the two films share the same universe and core themes, they differ significantly in impact and execution. The original Platform excelled in its psychological depth, leveraging a minimalistic setting to explore complex moral dilemmas. Goreng, the protagonist, carried the film's emotional weight, transforming from a hopeful idealist to someone trapped in a morally ambiguous nightmare. The confined environment heightened the tension, and every decision made by the characters was laced with existential dread. The focus was not just on survival but also on the breakdown of human nature when confronted with extreme scarcity and systemic inequality. The Platform itself symbolized a brutal social hierarchy, with those at the top receiving luxuries while those below fought for scraps. The film's visceral violence was deeply tied to its message, making each bloody moment a necessary exploration of power dynamics, privilege, and despair. Emotionally, the original film was a gut punch, a grim reflection of humanity's worst instincts in an unfair world. The Platform 2 tries to retain this emotional intensity, but its narrative and character development are far less cohesive. While the first film's simplicity made its social critique clear, the sequel complicates its message by introducing new elements like religious figures and enforcers of the system, diluting the original impact. Perempuan, the new protagonist, lacks the emotional journey that Goreng went through, making it harder for the audience to engage with her. The sequel expands the world of the prison, adding layers of symbolism and authority figures, but the lack of clear motivations and direction weakens the emotional core. Where the original was sharply focused on survival and ethical decay, the sequel becomes more about spectacle and violence without the same psychological depth. Visually, both films rely on stark, claustrophobic imagery, but the Platform 2 leans more heavily on violence for shock value. The first film's brutality was an essential part of its message, forcing viewers to confront the consequences of extreme inequality. In contrast, the sequel's violence feels more gratuitous, lacking the same emotional resonance and sense of purpose. The confined setting that once drove intense character drama now feels overused and less impactful. Thematically, the first film's commentary on class disparity and systemic inequality is much sharper. The second film, with its added layers of religious allegory and new power structures, muddies the waters, making its message harder to decipher. While the Platform left audiences questioning their own moral limits, the Platform 2 leaves viewers more confused than introspective. In summary, the Platform 2019 is a tightly constructed, emotionally gripping exploration of human nature under extreme duress, while the Platform 2 2024 is a more chaotic, less focused sequel that attempts to expand the world but ultimately loses the psychological and emotional depth that made the first film so impactful. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Platform and the Platform 2, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insightful content. We'll be diving into even more movies, analyzing their themes, characters, and hidden meanings. Don't miss out on our upcoming releases, where we'll continue to explore thought-provoking films and concepts. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update, and stay tuned for more exciting content coming your way soon.